record this session so we have it for later use. If you ever want to come back, or if someone didn't make the session, they'll be able to see it as well. So I'm going to reshare my screen because I have lots of great stuff to share with you today. We're going to get started. We have a full afternoon. So here we go. Okay. So first off, welcome. I am so excited that you all are here. My name is Katie, as I mentioned, and I'm really looking forward to hosting this information session for new to homeschooling families and those families that will be new to a hybrid learning fashion this school year. So welcome to everyone that is on the Zoom call and to everyone joining us live on Facebook. We have a full afternoon, as I said, of experienced homeschooling caregivers that are excited to talk with you about varying topics. So we're going to put our panel schedule in the chat feature. We will have time at the end of the session for Q&A for those on the Zoom call. You will notice that everyone is muted to help keep our session flowing. We will be monitoring the chat, as I mentioned, so you can utilize that throughout the session, but we do encourage you to save your bigger questions for the end where you can unmute yourself to interact. So as time permits, we will also monitor any questions coming in through our Facebook feed. So once again, with all of the housekeeping out of the way, thank you so much for joining us today as we talk about the ways that your public library can support you on your homeschooling journey. So let's dive in. So taken right from the Handley Regional Library System website, where we aim to be transparent with our patrons about the library's role in the community, is our mission statement that you see on your screen. And this says, Handley Regional Library System provides outstanding information, resources, programs, and services to enrich our diverse community. Your public library is here for you in more ways than you actually probably know. So my goal today is to break down those keywords described in our mission statement to clearly inform you about the ways that we are here to support homeschooling families. So first and foremost, we are here to provide outstanding information. Our libraries include a diverse array of collections for all kinds of readers and learners. So of course we house numerous types of books, but we also offer patrons audiobooks that you can pair with an easy reader or chapter book, video games, magazines and newspapers, educational launchpad tablets, nature backpacks, Wi-Fi hotspots, and more. Of course, all of these items are free to borrow with your library card. So to support your homeschooling journey, we offer a parent-teacher collection. This lives at the Handley branch, and it includes popular curriculum titles such as 5 in a Row and other homeschooling overview books that really break down each grade level to help. There are more books in this collection on raising children and assisting teachers with supplemental material that can go with their instruction guidelines. These materials follow the typical 3-week checkout period. The reference collection at each of our branches include youth and adult titles and house more like textbook type materials. So this includes history, science, and general encyclopedia sets, as well as atlases, dictionaries, etc. So this collection will support any research assignments you are doing at home. Unfortunately, these books are not for checkout and they must be used in the library. And additionally, our digital library is accessible 24/7 with your library card. We offer resources to download and stream for your ebooks and audiobooks like Hoopla, Libby, and RB Digital. All of these are also available as apps for easier use. We offer resources to research and learn as well for all ages in the family. Our online databases range from homework help for kids and teens to language learning, career and test prep. I am going to share and show you what this looks like on our main page. Hopefully you're seeing what I'm seeing. These are a vast list of all of our databases. So as I mentioned, homework help, career and test prep, language learning, history and genealogy, lifelong learning, and so much more. So we obviously have an extensive list that I mentioned. So some to highlight for at-home learning would be Scholastic Go. Scholastic Go is great for elementary, middle, and high school students, adults, teachers, and educators, actually. So on Scholastic Go, you're able to see photographs and videos, and you can also get lesson plans, read descriptions, and learn about other lands and peoples. So this is Scholastic Go. And like I mentioned, it is great for all ages in the family. So another one to highlight would be our Testing and Education Reference Center. This allows you to practice for SAT and other sort of college and graduate school prep exams. And again, I'm going to share my screen and we are going to go to that site. This is great for just practice, or if you really are taking this, those entrance level tests, for you to be able to practice on this site. So it includes other military exams, practicing for the GED, as well as ebook study guides, and a great college planning center on here as well. And then lastly, for our digital library, we have Find It Virginia that I wanted to highlight. And this is a carefully curated selection of authoritative databases. There are online learning products and digital reading content. So you will notice once I find, if I went to Find It Virginia K through 5, it would show me what is geared towards those ages and grade levels, as you see on your screen. But then we can also go to other ages in Find It Virginia. So it's a great platform that houses many resources that you can use. So secondly, we are here to provide outstanding resources, whether it is connecting you to a community organization, recommending your next read, or suggesting additional at-home learning tools. The resources that we curate both online and in person are created with you in mind. So through the library's Kids and Teens website pages, you will find an overview of Homeschooling 101. So this includes local and state guidance, where to find a homeschooling community or co-op, and just generally offers you a clear pathway on your homeschooling journey. So I do want to show you what this looks like as well on our website. And you will see some resources here on the side, some drop-down buttons of questions that you may have. And I will say that after today's session, we will also be adding to this webpage, because our speakers for the rest of this afternoon will have much more to share, and we will continue to build that database to help you with those guidelines and resources. So we are also here to provide outstanding programs. Over the years, the Youth Services Division in our library system has expanded our programming and outreach efforts to meet the needs of the community that we serve. In the past, we've connected patrons of all ages through programs like Teen Game Nights, story times, including a sensory sensitive story time, dance party, Lego club, storybook yoga, bad arts, teamworks, nature surprises, a Girls Who Code club, special seasonal events, and more. Programming is one of the most fun things that we really get to do in youth services. Of course, every program we offer is free and open to anyone in the suggested age range, and each of these programs is perfect for your homeschoolers. So given the uncertain times that we are in due to COVID-19, we have taken all of our program virtually, which you can find streaming on our Facebook page or on our YouTube channel. A program that is just for homeschooling families is a program called Homeschool Hub. So this program is very much rooted in the letters of STEAM. My coworker Gina will speak more on this program and its foundation in a bit. But some unique things I did want to highlight about this program that we really love is that each year we host a fall science fair, a spring spelling bee, and an art show we were hoping to showcase and kick off this summer, but obviously we're unable to do so during the pandemic. But whether it's in-person programming, virtually, or what have you, library programming is free, educational, and interactive, a perfect way to engage and connect with others. And lastly, friends, we're here to provide outstanding services to our library patrons. I've already talked about some of the many services that we offer in our libraries. You see here that we refer to the 3 C's in our system. We aim to offer common areas for you to meet, work, and study, and read in each of our branches. I should note that because of COVID-19, we're being forced to obviously have more strict guidelines about patrons gathering at this time. However, you are able to print, copy, scan, fax, meet with a notary, use a computer, access our Wi-Fi, do deeper research in our archives. So we're also really glad to be in a position to also offer you, refer you to an agency or organization in the community that might be able to better help you with what you need. And of course, we also love partnering with local organizations in our programming efforts as well. And as always, we strive to have popular titles that you would want to check out through our up-to-date technology. If we don't have something that you're looking for, patrons are able to loan a title from another library through us. At this time, however, interlibrary loans are temporarily unavailable, sadly due to COVID-19, but we hope to offer this service again soon. If you also do not know, patrons can suggest titles. And we're also really excited because we have an array of expanded readers advisory services that includes our Next Reads newsletters, which are genre-based book recommendations from our library staff. And we also have a book match system that is another great way to find or your next read or to try something entirely new. So I gave a really quick overview of some of the things that the library hopes to provide our community. Essentially, our goal is to be a resource in the communities that we serve by creating connections to information and entertainment, and by being the center of learning. So we hope that you will be able to discover community through your library, and we hope that we can help you on your homeschooling journey. So I hope that some, if not all, of this information proves to be helpful to you as you begin homeschooling. Your library is always here to support you and help you find the next right thing. So I'm going to leave us with this quote here, and I'm going to turn it over now to my coworker Gina to talk a little bit about our Homeschool Hub program.
Thanks, Katie. Hi, everybody. My name is Gina Bird. I'm a youth services assistant here at Hanley Library, and I also help Miss Katie run our Homeschool Hub program. So that is what I am going to talk to you about today. So Homeschool Hub started as a way for homeschooling families to get together and share a social experience. So I wasn't here when it started, but I am told that there was one family when it first started with 4 kids, and it just sort of grew and snowballed from there. So each week we would complete a STEAM challenge. That's science, technology, engineering, art, and math. And then we would link that activity back to the resources that we have in our library. Last year, our Homeschool Hub program became so popular that we actually had to break it up into 2 age groups. So we had a lowers group and an uppers group. And that ended up being kind of a happy accident because we were able to kind of concentrate our energy and our focus to the age groups of the kids that were attending each week. So it was a good accident. Our Homeschool Hub will look a little different this year, as everything will. We are going to do monthly Zoom calls the first Wednesday of each month. going to focus on STEAM, and we're going to incorporate some more guest speakers. So it's not just me and Miss Katie, but it's other people in our community giving you some information. So let me give you a little sneak preview of what we have planned. For September, we're focusing on natural disasters. We're going to talk about earthquakes, and Miss Katie and I will demonstrate a really fun Jello experiment that we have planned before we sit down. So we're really excited that we get to do it. October will be Wonderful Wellness. We're going to talk about healthy eating, exercise, yoga. I'm actually a certified yoga instructor, so I'll be leading a kind of yoga exercise. And we're going to have a guest speaker. One of our homeschooling caregivers is going to talk to us about triathlons and Ironmans and or Ironman, and everything that she does to get ready for those races. November will be outer space. We're going to demonstrate a fizzy planet experiment and possibly Skype with a scientist, which we have done in the past and has been really interesting and just fun for the kids to get that experience. December will be History and Me. We're going to complete a family tree, and we will possibly have a guest speaker from our very own archives department. We're also kind of developing a pen pal club to kind of bring our homeschooling families back to being social with each other, kind of an old school pen pal experience. So look for some more information on that. Miss Katie, do you have anything to add?
I don't think so. That was great. We wanted to start off at the top by really pushing the library, making sure that our patrons know that we are here for you. But we're going to dive in. I'll let Gina kick us off with the rest of our speakers for today.
Yes, first up we have Ashley. She's going to talk about the top 3 reasons why I love homeschooling. So take it away, Ashley.
Hi, Katie and Gina. Thanks for having me here today. Hello, veteran homeschool families, new, near, and far. The library is amazing. I will say we honestly tried Homeschool Hub one time and I fell in love with it, but I could not get Jude to come back only because we joke that we don't do walls. And as you can tell, I'm out here on my big, beautiful back porch, and that kind of segues into a couple of the things that we love about homeschooling is the flexibility. When I learned that my child was a kinesthetic learner and needed a lot of hands-on, a lot of movement, a lot of energy that's like just extra sometimes it feels like put into his learning, I knew that being able to be outside lots and move our bodies lots was going to be part of our homeschool curriculum. And so having that flexibility to honor my child where he is on any given day, because it's going to vary day by day, is one of the things that I love about homeschooling, honoring my child every day. And when you ask Jude or my husband about that flexibility component, it's for my husband, I wanted to be sure to include his opinion in this, because I think having the support of your co-partner and your family is part of the success in your homeschool. You know, you have to have that support. It makes it just really lovely experience, because you know, it's not just a life, it's not just a choice for schooling, but it's a lifestyle choice in my opinion. So if you ask Chad, he likes to have that flexibility for his creativity as well. So if we wake up one day and we don't feel like doing our language arts, then you know, we'll dive into something else instead, and when you know, he's ready, we can circle back around that. And I feel like as he gets older, you know, we'll have a little more expectation, but now in these early ages, we love that flexibility. And if you ask Jude, he says that flexibility allows him time to play with his toys more. And so I think that's another thing that I love about homeschooling is that, you know, I've only got one. There's lots of ranges of family sizes that are out there, but it really doesn't take very much time during our day to do the academic nitty-gritty ABCs and 1, 2, 3s, and we incorporate that into our daily lives with, you know, cooking and gardening, and he helps his daddy work on the vehicles. So there's so many ways that you can have learning for your child in your life that isn't workbooks and worksheets. And so that flexibility is something I really love. Being outside is definitely number two. Like I said, we joke we don't do walls. I'm sure we'll be enjoying Homeschool Hub more so this year than last year, and I really think it was because it was in a building. I can't hardly ever get him to do anything that's inside a building, but if it's outside, he is all about it. I can't get him to Swiffer my floors hardly ever, but if Daddy wants to hack on the fence line, he is all about it. So, you know, being able to be outside and do these things and explore nature and learn about our tiny ecosystem, are just, you know, we have a few acres we're blessed to have, but even if you have a small yard, even if you can only go to the park or walk downtown, you can envision this ecosystem, that there's so much that the learning is just available there that it might not be in a traditional classroom setting. All day long, you know, teachers could bring worms and butterflies in to, you know, observe and inspect, but to be out into the yard and seeing that firsthand is a really magical experience. So that flexibility in lots of different ways, and being able to be outside is another reason. And you know, we get to wear our pajamas if we want to. I think you know, that it might not seem like I see thumbs up there. You know, I get dressed because it makes me feel good, but you know, we're in our pajamas and we have a good time. And you know, it's so lovely. Again, I asked Jude what he loves about homeschooling, and he said he likes to spend time with Mommy. And I honestly didn't think he would say that. We've been with each other so much the last few months, but when he said that, I really you know, took that to heart so much, because we only have a few precious years that we get to have with our children. And so, you know, when he said that, I'm like, you know, you're absolutely right. We get to have this time together. I get to see every moment, you know, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and everything in between, and these magical learning moments that, you know, I might have otherwise missed. So we've been homeschooling since the very beginning. I have my background in early childhood education, so, you know, it didn't make sense in my head to pay somebody to do the things that I had already done for 10 years. And so it became natural for our family to homeschool, and we had planned on, you know, a traditional school setting, but especially now with the changing air of our country, it's makes me feel even more confident in that decision. And that was another thing my husband said that he wanted me to share, was he feels like we're really safe. We're not at so much risk of passing yuckies back and forth. But that was even before, you know, COVID hit our country. That was, you know, during flu seasons. And sometimes I have peers that are in a traditional school setting think that the child might not get the exposures they need to build the healthy immunity systems by being exposed to these germs, right? Well, then I counter that saying, well, we're outside in fresh air and we're building our immunity in different ways. And he licks plenty of things and his fingers goes in places it's not supposed to. So, you know, we're still getting that same amount of exposure, just in a different way. And you meet friends and families that have like mindsets, and that can make a very positive learning experience. If you have an opportunity for a co-op, whether it's through Zoom or in person, you know, you get to have that flexibility again. So, you know, lots of flexibility. You get to be outside as much as you want to. You can wear your pajamas. You know, we eat like 7 meals a day, like a bunch of hobbits. You know, we have a lot of fun, and we really, really enjoy homeschooling so much. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Ashley. That completely segues into what we're going to be talking about next with Lorelei, how to know your child's learning style. So Ashley was talking about she knew Jude's learning style and that he was better being at home and outside. And Lorelei will clue us in on how to know your child's learning style.
Hi, so I'm Lorelei, and I'm going to go ahead and start by sharing my screen. And one of the reasons I'm going ahead and giving you a presentation is so that you can take screenshots. This is kind of an information-dense topic, and I'm definitely going to move through this pretty quickly. So how do you know your child's learning style? And basically, learning style is about connecting students to knowledge. So how do I know? anything about learning style. So this is a list of some of the things I've done in my lifetime to give you some understanding of how I've reached these conclusions. Girl Scouting, Boy Scouting. I am a parent with autism and dyslexia, homeschooling those. I've also been in the classroom. I've been out of the classroom. I have taught all age levels from kindergarten to adult. And basically, a concerned parent does better research than the FBI. So if you have questions, then you start doing research and you start learning. And so when we look at this question, how do you know your child's learning style? The short answer is observation. You are there and you're the watching, and so you're going to see patterns. So how do you know what to look for? And this is where it's going to get pretty technical. First, you need to understand how information enters the brain. So I would like to remind you that neurology does not refer just to the neurons in the brain, but to the neurons throughout the body. So that's going to include the senses. Everything that a person sees, smells, tastes, hears, touches is an entryway through neurons to the brain of information. So when we're aware that information is entering the brain through multiple pathways simultaneously, now we can start looking for some patterns about what we're seeing in behavior. You're going to be looking and observing for those patterns and preferences that you might see your child express. Does he remember songs better than he remember pictures? A great example with my son, when he was about 3, we attended an event at the Shenandoah Valley Discovery Museum, and they played with silly putty. And what's interesting is that he actually touched the silly putty and had an immediate negative reaction. He actually gagged over the texture of the silly putty. However, simultaneous to the silly putty play, they were also playing a story of the Billy Goat Scruff on a CD. And when we got home that night and I said, go ahead and tell Daddy what you did today, he only related the story to his father. He did not relate the sensory experience with the silly putty to his father. Right? So that's a really important window for me to know that he's remembering what he hears much more strongly than what he experiences with his hands. Is she wiggly or always out of her chair? This is going to indicate that there's a sensory need for movement, that kinesthetic learning. Also, there's a growing body of research about vestibular input. So the vestibular system is the inner ear that determines balance and movement according to gravity, and a growing body of research is indicating that sufficient vestibular development significantly affects reading as we develop reading skills. What part of the story or event does your child tell first when you ask them to relay, right? Just like the example where about what he remembered things first. They're gonna tell you what they remember, what sticks in their head. One of the clues that's used by occupational therapists is by asking kids to draw a self-portrait. Very consistently, particularly with little kids, that kindergarten, first grade age where they're testing kids for entry into school, inviting them to draw a self-portrait or a picture of a human being, period. They will show exactly what their body does. So there's a specific book called Raising a Sensory Smart Child that's co-authored by an OT and a parent. And she talks about very consistently kids who draw 2 eyes with a line between them. Well, when they go back and check the physicality of the child actually doesn't have the muscular tone to roll her eyes in her head. Her eyes are connected to each other. And she's drawing that when she draws that self-portrait. For my son, his stick people have no features at all. They have no face. They're just a big blob of skin, right? Movement and being a bag of human jelly, it's a horrible description, is like the best description of how he feels in his body. However, when he draws sharks, they have gigantic eyes because he read that they hunt by sight, right? So kids will show you in their pictures exactly what their senses are picking up. Do they hang upside down or spin a lot? I can remember hanging upside down off my couch with my head towards the floor. We see a lot of that in homeschooling, kids suspend upside down, or they'll be in a hammock under a table. All of that's that vestibular input, and it's actually super, super important for reading and general balance and motor coordination. Do they move their limbs or their digits independently? So that's going to be an indication not only of their ability to receive information through their body, but also express information through their body. And that also will give you some ideas about academic readiness. So when I was teaching archery, that's one of the many things I've done. And one of the conversations we had is that when you draw a bow For a child who isn't ready to separate their limbs from each other, when they pull with those arms, the whole body tenses and they'll actually come up on their toes. And that indicates to you that they're not getting different parts of their body separate from each other. Everything they're experiencing is a whole body experience, right? And so a dance teacher at a school I worked with talked about the fact that by watching kids dance, by seeing that development where they start to differentiate their limbs, was the best indicator for reading readiness. Because now they were able to take sounds apart. Now they were able to take letters and words apart and be able to actually decode text. I can tell you for my daughter, who is severely dyslexic, she has an auditory processing disorder. Her reading would not come and would not come and would not come and would not come. And the way she processes letters is ridiculous. Movement became really the key for her. And the two key things that happened for us was that the lady down the street taught her to finger spell. And within 24 hours, my child learned to spell. And the second piece was that we put her in dance. And I specifically put her in flamenco so that it was a really hard rhythm input on the body with the storytelling component. And literally within 2 months, reading came. So really just being observant, really keenly observant. Know that the more sensory and neurological pathways that you deliver information through, then the stronger the memory will be for them to gain. So one of the things that's coming up in neurological research is the idea that your brain, and this is kind of on the next slide, but your brain will burn, for lack of a better description, a pathway as it gains an experience, and that's the memory. It's only accessed through the original pathway that's created in the experience. So if you only can access that information by looking at it, then to remember it, you have to see something that triggers that visual memory. Whereas if you experience something in a multisensory way, then any one of those inputs can trigger you back to the original, a big idea. So multisensory is a big deal. Do know that when you have a sense of threat, that fight or flight response, it will override content. There's a chemical reaction that occurs neurologically at that point in which the content cannot be retained, only the emotional intensity of the event. And this has to do with trauma-informed education and PTSD type conversations. But basically the idea is that you want to be careful about creating so much stress. And one of the real gifts of homeschooling is that we can control that and monitor and decrease threat in a way that a lot of times is not doable in a traditional educational setting. So after we talk about how information gets into the head, then you need to think about how the brain processes. So the first thing you need to know is that the most up-to-date neurological research says that our brain thinks in terms of what we call chunking. You have to start with what you know. You're going to see all kinds of tools for educators. A KWL means know, what, learn. And the idea is that you start with what you know, and then you connect a new idea to it. There's tons of child development research that says the same thing. But the example I would give you is to imagine like driving in your head, give yourself directions from one place to another. You literally will not be able to envision the entire route. Your head has to go from the beginning to the one landmark. And once your head gets there, then you can go to the next landmark. So information is grouped together in your head by experience. Another great example is the word cake, right? You do not have any idea of a cake as just a cake. When you're thinking about a cake, you probably have a smell, a taste associated with it, probably some kind of social context, maybe a birthday party, maybe a wedding anniversary. You're gonna have a visual sight. You're gonna know it's chocolate, or you're gonna know it's not chocolate. You're gonna know that it's colored. You're gonna know that it has fruit. There's a lot of context that goes around every single idea. Nothing that anyone learns is outside of that chunking context. The next thing you need to know is a word that we call relevancy. And so the idea of relevancy is that it's relevant, right? That it relates to things. All of these chunks go together. A child cannot learn, you cannot learn anything until it's relevant to you, right? So if we try to offer kids information in a way that it's not connected to what they know, or it's not connected to their immediate need, their head just won't hold on to it. And this is the phenomenon we see traditionally in schools where we cram for a test and then don't remember any of it because the relevancy is gone. And again, emotional charge will shape the priority of the content. So this is why things like we talk about gamification or game schooling, When we play a game with the information, it's now immediately relevant to my sense of emotional success. And the retention of that information is actually going to be much higher because there's real emotional relevancy to that information. So one of the big things about neurology is this idea that circuits that fire together wire together. The more often that you have a thought, the stronger that neurological pathway becomes. It literally, the synapses between the neurons become coated, and they make it more difficult for new ideas to wire into that circuit. This information comes from a lot of research, again, about trauma-informed therapy and about OCD and PTSD, and this idea of what's actually happening in the circuitry of the brain. So for learning, this is a great tool, right? That's how we create repetition, but it also can be a detriment knowing that the more often you fire on the exact same route, the more you actually decrease creativity, the harder it is for them to put new ideas on that idea. And again, we've talked about remembering comes from activating the original sensory neurological pathway. You don't ever actually get to create a new pathway to a memory. You reactivate an existing pathway to get to the memory. And then the last thing you need to know is how things move from short-term to long-term memory. It's not exactly like the movie Inside Out. But basically, this is the idea that if relevancy is not assigned to the chunk, if whatever your head doesn't prioritize it, then your head loses it. It just doesn't hold on to the chunk. And because the circuit's not wired together. So I just want to give you some kind of vocabulary words. Modalities or learning styles is something that you're going to come across. Auditory, visual, and kinesthetic are very traditional in the education world. Auditory, obviously having to do with hearing, visual having to do with seeing, kinesthetic having to do with movement. We use kinesthetic a lot of times to refer to hands-on learning, but it doesn't have to be just hands-on learning. Kinesthetic can be your whole body. There's also a practice called total physical response, which is very similar to what we do with kids like the itsy bitsy spider, right? Like that's auditory, visual, and kinesthetic. That's the idea, is that we hit all three of those modalities with one learning event. However, I would encourage you not to be limited to those three learning modalities. There is a whole philosophy called multiple intelligences. I'm going to list the book a little later, but when this idea first came out, these were the 8 multiple intelligences that were identified as key patterns by which people learn. So logic, mathematics, linguistic, music, interpersonal, how you relate to others, or no, interpersonal is how you relate to yourself, like someone who's super reflective, very aware of their own body. Intrapersonal, how they relate to others, people who are really aware of social dynamics. Naturalist, people who really prefer to be outside. Spatial reasoning, and bodily kinesthetic reasoning. I will say that Howard Gardner is the author who came up with this, and he has done a lot of subsequent research. And there are people who identify up to 30 different multiple intelligences. So when I say be observant, y'all don't limit yourself. Know that you're going to come across the word comprehension. Comprehension attempts to measure whatever that relevancy is that an individual brain has attached to a piece of information, right? So do you remember the story? Why is the story important? How does the story relate to what's happening in your real life? Do you know the historical event? It's not enough to know the date. You need to have context for how that event connects to what we do now. We talk about it in the sciences too. Okay, I memorized scientific method. That doesn't mean anything if I can't apply scientific method to the next experiment.
Lorelai, I hate to interrupt you there, but we are running a little bit over. So I just want to make you aware of that.
Yep. Recall is the idea of accessing information without the chunking, and recall is not very good learning. And then the last piece you're going to run across is concrete versus abstract. And the idea here is that the concrete is the literal world, where abstract is the metaphorical world. And you're going to run into literature that indicates to you that kids are not capable of abstract thought. And I'm going to disagree with you, because every kid I know knows that that yellow M does not mean that they're going to have to look at the letter M. They know that it means French fries. Every kid I know knows that. So just to be clear, your role as a parent is to observe and document. Your child's role is to experiment and reflect. And you can assist, right, through both of those. I remind you that as a parent, when they're little, they're not going to have all of this narrative memory. You are the narrative memory. So talk to your kids about what you've observed as they grow older. make sure that you're walking them through this reflective process to encourage that growth mindset. So this is the list of go-to books that I would definitely encourage you to check out. Brain Rules by John Medina is a very modern book, very easy to read. Frames of Mind and Multiple Intelligence, Howard Gardner again. The Absorbent Mind by Maria Montessori and How Children Learn by John Holt are very much about how to observe children. But I would follow up on exactly what Ashley said. The most important piece of homeschooling is building a relationship with your child. That is what's going to empower you to be able to know how your kid learns. To really understand them, you've got to build a relationship. So thanks for your time.
Thank you so much. So much information, so interesting. And I noticed you have your email down below on that presentation. So people can certainly get in touch with you if they have any questions. Thank you. All right, we are moving on to Vicki. She's going to talk about how to find your teaching style / educational philosophy. So Vicki, you're up.
Well, thanks so much for having me here today. I appreciate this opportunity. My husband and I have homeschooled 17 children using lots of different approaches, lots of different learning styles involved there, as Lorelei has talked about. Worked with thousands of families across the country over the last almost 30 years. So I'm just going to share a little bit of what we've picked up there. And I'm actually going to kind of piggyback on Lorelei's example of the cake. So let's think a little bit about putting together a homeschool cake. All right, so some of you, if I said you needed to come up with a homeschool cake, you'd think, okay, I'm just into the cake mix here. I'll just pick up a box mix here. And you can equate that to, in homeschooling circles, a curriculum package where it's put together for you. You're going to implement it just like with the cake mix. You're buying it. It's all put together for you. All you got to do is open the box, dump it out, follow the directions, and you've got hopefully a cake. So same thing with a package of curricular materials. So this is more going to be probably usually a little an eclectic approach, unless you're using one publisher where everything may be from that same publisher, but you're looking at buying the package. It's the cake mix version, which is perfectly fine. When it's all done, you're going to have a cake. Some of you might think of making a cake from scratch, where you want to be able to pick and choose your ingredients, the quality of this ingredient, the flavor of that ingredient. And you can translate that into homeschooling circles by thinking of an eclectic approach, picking and choosing. I'm going to get a math program that I like from over here, and somebody told me about this language arts program over there that sounds really good, and I want to do something a little different for science and history. So you're putting the parts together yourself, and some of you will feel more comfortable with that. Some of you are saying, I don't want to have to deal with that. I don't want to do anything from scratch. Just give me the box. That's okay. Some of you are more comfortable putting the parts together yourself. Still others of you might say, I need a homeschool cake. Fine, I'm going to stop by Martin's and pick something up. I don't want to have to do this. I'm going to have somebody do this for me, and I will have the cake so that we can eat it. You may find that to equate to an online academy or a tutor or a distance learning program. So this is a little bit about the type of packaging you might like for your material. But now that we've got a cake and we've decided, okay, we're going to do it from scratch, we want to box mix, we're going to pick it up from the grocery store or have it baked for us, then you got to think about what flavor cake do I want. So as we're thinking of homeschooling flavors, you and I only know to do what we did. If all I've ever eaten is a vanilla cake or a white cake or a pineapple upside down cake, whatever it might be, if that's the only cake I ever had, then to me, that's what a cake is. Going back to some of the memory that Lorelei had mentioned. So, and there may be nothing wrong with that pineapple cake or that vanilla cake or that chocolate cake. But if we want to stretch out a little bit, I want you to think about if nobody told you that when your child turned 5, she had to go to school, what would you be doing with her? Because you homeschooled for 5 years right off the bat. The first 5 years of your child's life, you were basically homeschooling. But then what happens when our kids turn about 5, we feel like, oh my goodness, it's time for school to start. Life has to turn upside down. So I want you to think about what your family does naturally, some of your family dynamics. How can we take some of what your children would do on their own, what you would do with them as a family, and make that a little bit more purposeful in your homeschooling choices? So your learning preferences are going to factor into this, but this is really more about how you and your child interact, how you're going to choose those materials. We're really looking at family dynamics. So I'm going to run really quickly through some typical approaches to learning. And I'm going to give you some examples. I'm going to go pretty quickly through this. I give this as a 1-hour workshop. We're condensing it down to about 10 minutes. So again, I want you to think of your family dynamics. Now, as I go through these examples, and I talk quickly so you can listen to the replay, but as I go through these examples, there may be a few things that I'll hit on and you'll think, oh my goodness, why would anybody do that to their kids? Or, oh my, I can't imagine ever doing that. That's okay. Those probably aren't the best fit for you. But hopefully at least one thing in here, you'll think, oh, that sounds cool. I could see us doing that. Or you may think, we already do that. I didn't know that was a thing. That may be something you want to look into. So the first approach, and there are a lot of different approaches. I'm going to hit on some more commonly termed ones. The first is a traditional approach. And a traditional approach is sort of that textbook, workbook, kind of a standard scope and sequence method. In a traditional approach, you're dividing learning up into those 12 years of learning, 13 if you count kindergarten, looking at about probably around 180 days a year. On the plus side of this, it's pretty easy to use. It's usually lesson planned out for you, or it's very simple to lesson plan because of the way it's structured. It's usually pretty standardized. The testing and grading are pretty simplified for you, and there's definite milestones for you. They're very defined. When you finish this material, you finish first grade. When you finish this material, you finish second grade. On the downside, it can usually be kind of generic. It's assuming that education should be compartmentalized because usually you've got all of your subjects divided up. It's pretty teacher directed most of the time, unless you're doing something online or you're using a co-op. It's usually going to be fairly teacher directed, which reads a little more time intensive for you. And usually if you have multiple kids, they're going to be studying different things in different subjects at the same time. So now I'm going to tell you some pros and cons of each of these just so you can be thinking about them. I don't want you to be keeping some metric over here of there were this many pros, this many cons, so this must be the thing we're supposed to buy. I just want you to be aware of some of the upsides and downsides. Sometimes the downside of something may be what makes it work best for you. So I just want you to be aware of some things to look for. Some examples of this sort of material would be things such as the major publishers, Bob Jones, Abeka. Most correspondence courses or online academies are going to follow a traditional approach to learning. And generally, most things with textbooks. Now, there are a lot more textbooks available nowadays that are designed specifically for homeschoolers. They're written to the student, usually by about 4th or 5th grade on. For example, Apologia and teaching textbooks, and learning language arts through literature, science in the beginning, Sax and Maths homeschool kits, and so forth. But these are kind of a traditional approach. If you're coming into homeschooling just to try to cover your bases for this year because, oh my goodness, we're going to do this year, but as soon as everything opens back up again, we're going to be right back into a conventional school. This can be a good fit for you because there's not going to be as much of a transition for your student to go back into school. Even if you just look at this approach for math and language. Math and language are skills subjects. So you're going to want to cover those fairly sequentially with your kiddos. The other subjects, science and social studies, are content-based. And it really doesn't matter so much if you do the solar system this month and weather next month or vice versa, as long as eventually you cover your bases. But generally for math and language, a traditional approach feels more comfortable to most people. But that's also going to overlap a little bit here because a traditional approach, textbook approach, can also be incorporated into some of these others. These are not mutually exclusive. You can borrow and rearrange from these, but probably something's just going to settle with you a little bit more than others. The next one we're going to talk about is a classical approach. And to really, really simplify this, a classical approach divides there's a lot more to it than this, so I don't want to sound like I'm minimizing this at all, but it's going to divide learning into kind of chunks of child development and brain development. It's going to divide mental development into 3 basic stages. The first is the grammar stage, and that's those younger kids who are about ages 5 to 11-ish. And this is when your kids are just soaking up knowledge. They memorize everything, even if they don't know what it means. And that's okay that they don't know what to do with it yet. They're putting it all in. They're building the hooks that they're going to hang their future knowledge on. As Lorelei talked about, having those original things for them to be able to hook to later on. They've got to have something to connect to later. I like to think of it as building mental Velcro. But this is a good time for them to memorize scripture and learn colors and numbers and shapes and memorize new words and things. They're not reasoning a whole lot at this point, probably. They may be able to memorize something and not tell you how to apply it, but that's okay. The next stage is the dialectic or the logic stage. And that's when they're about 11 or 12-ish to about 15. They're starting to analyze more. They've been soaking all of that up. Now they're figuring out what to do with that information. A lot of independent thought, abstract thought, the time of drawing conclusions and things like that. This is when you get into kids debating with you a lot. Capitalize on that. Then there's the rhetoric stage, which is the mid to later teens and that sort of thing. Now, the pro side of this is that it's very tailored to the stages of mental development. It helps kids think, develop their thinking skills, their verbal expression, their written expression, a lot of independent learning here, and a lot of the great minds of history were taught this way. On the downside, there's not tons of prepared curriculum available, although there's more and more every year, but this is generally going to require a fairly scholarly teacher and student. If you're not really into discussing what your kids are learning, talking about ideas with them, sorting through things, this probably isn't the best fit for you, or you will need to find somebody to help have those discussions with your kids. So just want to point that out. I can give you some helpful reading. We'll put it down in the comments, some books and articles to look up on that. Another approach is a living books approach. You may hear this in homeschooling circles referred to as a Charlotte Mason approach. Charlotte Mason was a turn of the century, last century, British educator who really believed more in respecting kids as persons, not little containers to be filled with knowledge. So one of the foundations of a Charlotte Mason approach is real life experiences and living books. So living books are books that are written by someone with a passion for the subject who wants to make that come alive for your kids. They don't usually say grade 1, grade 2, grade 3 on them. So your kids are very active participants in the learning process here. They're using real objects, real books. It's usually pretty character heavy as far as stressing good character and good habits. Not a lot of busy work. A lot of the material here is going to be very relevant. It can be a little child-centered, so you got to be careful of that. Not a whole lot of outlined material, but again, it's becoming much, much more revived lately, and there's a lot more information available. But things such as Ambleside Online and 5 in a Row and others like that. Units, another one is Gather Round. Anything that's using a lot of those living books, those packages of books where you're just sitting down and reading fun books together and educational books. Then let's look at unit studies. A unit study is going to integrate several subjects or lots of subjects around a common topic or a theme or a unit. So for example, if you were studying birds, then your students might read or write short stories and poems about birds. Maybe they dissect a chicken bone to learn more about how birds stay airborne. I didn't know their bones were hollow until I did this with my kids. Maybe you observe the differences in the bird's feet and their beaks compared to what they eat. Maybe you visit a bird banding station and study some Audubon paintings, or maybe your kids copy some Audubon paintings. Maybe you identify birds in your neighborhood using a field guide, or build a birdhouse that's appropriate for your birds. Write a report about birds. So you're bringing in all these subjects. You've got science and art and handcrafts and language arts and those sorts of things. So on the plus side, a unit study can be very useful for multi-level learning. If you're teaching multiple levels of kids, different grade levels at the same time, if you had a math and a language, those skill subjects for each of your kiddos at their learning level, and then you had a unit study where the kids were all studying the same topic together, what's going to generally happen there is you're going to teach to the level of the oldest child in your unit study, or in your classical, or in your Charlotte Mason approach as well. You're going to teach to the level of the oldest child and include the younger ones. And you may have to adapt some things for them, pick up some books from the library that would be relevant to them at their level. But the younger ones are going to ride the mental bus to their own mental bus stop, and then they're going to hop off. So it's fairly easy to create unit studies. You can also buy them pre-done. On the downside, sometimes the record keeping can be a little bit more of a challenge, and it can require some teacher planning. But some examples of these would be Konos character curriculum, or Sunlight, which is a literature-based curriculum. Heart of Wisdom, My Father's World, which is history-based as well as classical with a little bit of unit studies. 5 in a Row, I believe she's mentioned earlier here today. Just a lot of different unit studies available for you. Then there's a relaxed approach. Sometimes you might hear it referred to as unschooling. There's a school of unschooling that is very child-directed, but there's also a philosophy of unschooling that's more just relaxed homeschooling. You're more capitalizing on the delights of your children. What are they interested in right now, and how can we bring their education in to pursue those formal academics as the need arises, as they're learning different things. So this is going to take not a whole lot of planning, but you're using those teachable moments. It's more of an access to the real world, kind of a discipleship model, not real structured. The plus side is it's not really structured. The downside is it's not really structured. So it's really depends on how you're looking at this. It can be a little harder to assess their learning levels, a little hard to explain to the relatives sometimes too. But there's a lot of great materials available to you there as well. So again, you can mix and match and use an eclectic approach. You may use textbooks for your math and language because they're still skill subjects, or you may find something online in your skill subjects and decide you want to use a unit study approach for your other subjects to integrate all of your kids, or you may just pull out that Charlotte Mason approach and be doing a lot of nature-based studies and reading with your kiddos in those other subjects, so that you have a lot of different options available to you. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of an overview. Hopefully something I mentioned to you made you say, oh, that sounds cool. I'd like to try that. So again, put some comments down there. If you have any questions, we'll try to circle back to those. I know this has been kind of quick, but I'll put some examples of some of these packages and some of the different materials down in the comments.
Vicki, thank you. So interesting. And we're going to hear from you in a few minutes about another topic. But thank you so much.
Sure.
All right. Next up, we have Lisa, who's going to talk about 5 things I wish I knew before I started homeschooling.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Lisa Rao. I have 2 sons who have homeschooled since the 1st grade. We started homeschooling in the 2007-2008 school year, and they graduated this year. Yay. We not only survived our journey, but I think we thrived along the way. Many adults who know our sons give us the highest compliment when they say that we raised good young men. And I am convinced that homeschooling was an integral part of that outcome. We started homeschooling because we could already tell just from kindergarten that regular school was not the right path for us. We wanted the time that we spent with our sons to be enjoyable. We wanted learning to be comfortable and relaxed. And if that meant that we were going to work at a different pace or in a different sequence to meet their needs, then those are the options that we wanted to have. So over the past 12 years, we have tried many different homeschooling options, some of which you've heard about recently. We have traveled the spectrum from unschooling to school at home, and we've taken various stops along the way to try different things. As our needs and interests changed, the way we did homeschool also changed. In hindsight, there are a few things that I wish that I had known when we started. and I'm going to share a few of those today. I organized them into 5 broad categories. I'm going to try to share my screen here. Okay. So be brave, be flexible, be humble, be tangible, and be fun. And some of this you will have already heard before. So first of all, be brave. You can do this. You know your child the best, and you want them to succeed more than anybody else does. You have already been their teacher in many areas. You didn't have all the answers when your child became a part of your family, and you figured out how to parent. So you can figure out how to homeschool as well. Let's see, I think this isn't showing. Can you guys see that?
Yes, we can see your screen. It looks great, Lisa.
There we go. Better. Okay, so humans are resilient. You are not going to irreparably harm your child if you make mistakes. In fact, they're going to learn a tremendous amount about responsiveness by learning how you react to challenges. And every day is another opportunity to start fresh. Some days you're going to be full of confidence, and other days you might question every decision that you make. On some days your kids are going to be enthusiastic, and on other days they're just going to want to skip school, and you might also. And it's okay, we all have those days, so relax. Even if you don't have lessons, your kids are going to learn something that day. Finally, in terms of being brave, you are empowered to make decisions for your homeschool. Take charge and do what you believe is best for your children and you. Don't let other people should on you. Well-meaning but misinformed friends and relatives might suggest that you're making a mistake. Thank them for their concern and assure them that you have done your research and believe in the path that you chose. Be brave. Number 2, be flexible. If something doesn't work, then change it. It's better to start over than to continue with a plan that is uncomfortable for everyone. There were several years when I thought that I had a great plan, and then a few weeks into the year, I could see that it wasn't working. So we paused and we reset. It's okay to deviate from the plan. Homeschool doesn't have to look like brick and mortar school with schedules and desks or any of that stuff. It's okay to work in the living room or the kitchen or the backyard. You can take days off. You can do every subject every day, or you can use block schedules, or you can use unit studies and merge all of the topics into one. You do what works for your family. The information doesn't have to come from textbooks or lesson plans. You'll see a lot of beautiful textbooks and some fascinating curricula options. I strongly encourage you to use free samples and trial periods before you spend money on anything. I learned that what looks awesome to me was sometimes not at all what my kids preferred. So as much as you can, let your kids test things before you pay for them. And finally, in terms of flexibility, you can choose your resources and they don't need to cost a lot of money. You will hear more about this later, but I encourage you to use free or inexpensive resources that are all around you. Most especially, use your daily life as the canvas upon which your children will paint their learning. So be flexible. Number 3, be humble. Ask for help. Nobody knows everything about everything. Look for someone who can help you if your child is interested in something and you don't have expertise. Algebra, Mandarin Chinese, sculpture, piano, dance, anything. I've seen that the Clark County Facebook members are very knowledgeable and very generous with that knowledge whenever somebody seeks a reference. Your neighbors, wherever you live, probably are as well. Explore the organizations in your local area. We have great homeschooling Facebook groups where you can search for a teacher, a tutor, a curriculum, or a co-op. Consider Scouts and 4-H. service organizations like the Ruritan or Kiwanis, churches, and of course the library system. And check out the private schools. If you can afford it, you might be able to have your child take specific classes at a local private school. One of our sons took electives for acting and for visual arts. Another part-time student at that same school went there just to study science. Finally, in being humble, you won't know what's possible if you don't ask. If money is limited, your child might be able to trade labor for lessons. Raking leaves, weeding a garden, putting together documents. Asking can make all the difference in getting the support that you need. So be humble. Number 4, be tangible. Relate learning to the real world, and you've heard a little bit about this already. Hands-on life experiences and real tools are just invaluable. Recipes in the kitchen offer practice for direction following, for measures and fractions, and they often include science concepts as well. Writing in cursive, that's our secret language, and two-handed typing can improve fine motor skills. Folding laundry increases coordination, dexterity, and visualization skills. Let your child find answers while you're out and about. They can calculate the tip in a restaurant or the savings at a sale in a store. Grocery shopping is a great way to teach rates, percentages, and comparisons. Let them use calculators because this is a tool that they're probably going to have their whole adult lives in their telephones. Include the arts to reinforce learning. Poetry, visual art, and music can easily supplement history and geography, as well as math concepts like symmetry and proportion. What can be better than making Stonehenge from salt dough or assembling your own human body from paper cutouts? Music from the World War II era is so different from today. It's a great way to explore how culture has shifted over time. So be tangible in what you do with your kids. Number 5, be fun. Curiosity should lead to experiences, and experiences will lead to learning. Learning is an internal process for all of us. We cannot put information in someone's brain, but we can set the conditions so that they will learn. Model being curious, and your children will be curious. And they'll learn when they strive to satisfy that curiosity. We are their role models, who they've looked up to for years. We can model how to be curious and how to find answers. And I think that is the best skill that any child can learn. Playing together and laughing together are priceless. You heard earlier about gaming. Well, we had a lot of game school when the boys were younger. Games can reinforce many life skills, like taking turns, following directions, generosity, sportsmanship. And then the games got even more fun when the boys started changing the rules, like going backwards in chutes and ladders. My sons and I all play Minecraft, so I've been able to relate a lot of science concepts to Minecraft game mechanics. Finally, in being fun, offer as many experiences as possible, both at home and in the world. Even when it seems like your child cannot have enough playground visits or paper or Play-Doh, be as generous as you can afford to be at that time, because that stage won't last forever. And let your children experience all the textures in life: tactile, visual, auditory, taste, and smell. It's okay if they get messy and they get loud. They're learning about the world through all of those experiences. So be fun. I appreciate being able to share these ideas with you today. I really do wish that I knew all these things when we started. Parenting is a tremendous responsibility. We each make the best choices that we can for our families. And no matter what you choose, I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you so much, Lisa. My goodness, you're also inspiring. Thanks. All right, we'll go back to Vicki. She's going to talk about homeschooling logistics.
All righty. I think I've got myself unmuted here.
There you go. Yep, I can hear you.
All righty, super. Well, we're going to talk a little bit about how to get started with homeschooling in Virginia. And I do want to share that nothing I'm telling you here is legal advice. I'm just going to walk you through what you can read for yourself in the statute. I'll tell you where you can find it as well. I'm not going to interpret it for you. I'm just going to tell you what it says, and we'll just go from there. So we're going to be talking, and I'll post this down below so you guys can look this up later on. But the compulsory attendance statute in Virginia is the Code of Virginia 22.1-254, and the homeschooling statute is 22.1-254.1. So those are the things we're going to be most concerned with here. Just so you know, you're in really good company homeschooling in Virginia. There are over 44,000 last year, not counting this coming up year. Last year, there were over 44,000 students on record as homeschooling in the state of Virginia, according to the Department of Education. So how did they do that? There are, this is, like I said before, I do a 35 or 40-minute talk on this, so you're getting the quickie version here. There are 4 ways to comply with compulsory attendance in the state of Virginia: by sending your child to public school, private or denominational or parochial school, using a certified tutor, or incorporating the homeschooling statute into your education experience here. There are also what you'll probably hear termed the religious exemption, which is an exemption from compulsory attendance. There's also the opt-out provision. In the state of Virginia, then your student is required, if your student is 5 by September 30th at the beginning of the school year, he falls under compulsory attendance. But if your child isn't 6 yet by September 30th and you don't feel that he's ready to begin school, then the law does provide in that compulsory attendance statute for you to send a letter opting him out for 1 year by writing to the school board and letting them know that your student, that you don't believe your student is ready to attend school that year, and you may keep him home for that year. During that year, you can work on kindergarten, you can whatever you want to do, that's totally up to you, but that is available. That's not a homeschooling thing, that's an anybody thing. But for most of you, you're probably most concerned with what's the homeschooling statute and what do I have to do? In the state of Virginia, the law says that you are to notify the superintendent of schools of your intent to provide home instruction. So that does not mean you're asking for permission. You are not applying for approval. The law has already given you permission if you file your intent, your notice of intent, and you comply with the requirements for whichever category you choose. So there are 4 options on a notice of intent. Now, you don't have to use a particular form. There's not a requirement that you have to fill out a specific piece of paper. So you could write this up in a letter, you could put it together however you want. I know that Homeschool Legal Defense Association does have a form that you can use, and HEAV, the Home Educators Association of Virginia, has a form that you can use. That those forms just ask you for what's required by law, no more, no less. So those are the ones that I would have personally used myself. So option 1 is that I have a high school diploma or higher. Option 2 is that I'm a certified teacher. Option 3 is that I'm going to provide a program of study or a curriculum which may be delivered through a correspondence course or distance learning program or in any other manner along those lines. And number 4, if I don't meet any of those other qualifications, for example, if I have a GED, that for this particular purpose does not count as a high school diploma. So the statute does allow for me to write a letter showing the superintendent that I am able to provide an adequate education for my child. So that letter is generally showing that you have a plan in mind, that you are literate and you are able to teach your child. And if you have any questions about what that letter should look like, then HSLDA or HEAV can give you some guidance on that. A lot of you will also be interested in the certified tutor statute as well. And I would encourage you to check with HSLDA or HEAV on that as well. At this particular time, it's gotten really interesting because in the past, the certified tutor statute has largely been utilized by parents who are teachers. And so they're using the certified tutor statute on their own behalf to teach their own children. I know that many of you probably have questions about somebody else teaching your children. And in those cases, I would suggest that you speak with HSLDA or HEAV. But so you're just going to fill out your notice of intent. It's due by August 15th. Generally speaking, the deadline for filing is August 15th, but the law does say that if you make the decision to homeschool after that deadline, or you moved into the county after that or whatever, you know, don't make your decision until after the deadline, then you are to notify them as soon as possible, and then to comply with the rest of the statute within 30 days. So I would assume that would mean, for example, if I'm choosing option 1, that I have a high school diploma, but I can't put my hands on that diploma right this minute. I could send in my notice under option 1 and let them know that I will be sending in the rest of my documentation as soon as possible. When you send in your notice of intent, the other requirement, so you're going to have your corroborating documentation, whether it's your copy of your diploma or your transcript, or it would be under option 2, your teacher certification. Option 3, that correspondence or distance learning program, you'd have to provide documentation that you were actually enrolled. And option 4 would be your letter. You're also required to provide a description of your curriculum, which the law defines as a list of subjects to be taught. So there is not a requirement to provide all kinds of details. Most people tend to just say, my child will be taught math, language arts, social studies, science. If you want to add in PE, music, art, whatever you feel like you want to list, you do not need to give them nitpicky details. You are verifying when you send this in that you understand at the end of the year, you will be required to show evidence of progress. And there's 2 different ways to do that. Let's back up a little bit to sending your notice in. I would recommend that you photocopy everything you send them, and that if you mail it certified return receipt, or some way that you get notification back that it's been received. Some places will now take them by email. Just double check with them and find out if your superintendent's office is taking them by email. You just want verification, because you're obligated to notify them. What they do with it once they get it is up to them. But you want to be able to say to somebody, if they were to ask you, yes, I can show you, I can prove to you that I notified them, I did my due diligence. At the end of the year, then you're going to show evidence of progress. And there's 2 ways to do that. One is to use any nationally normed standardized achievement test, and your student would need to show progress in the basic battery of basic composite score, which is math and language, in the 23rd percentile or above. The 4th stay-9 is actually what it is listed as now. That's the bottom end of the average range. Or if your student maybe doesn't test well, or you don't want to be testing your student, and we can give you lots of help on the testing end of it if you like, but you can also choose instead to submit an evaluation or any other assessment that the superintendent can utilize to determine that the student has made adequate progress, which is generally a year's progress. So those are the basics. At the beginning of the year, by August 15th, you're going to send in your notice of intent. You're going to include any corroborating documentation, your list of curriculum, send that off to them, then you're good to go until the end of the year, when by August 1st, your evidence of progress is going to be due. So that's it in a nutshell.
Vicki, thank you so much. Such great information there. Okay, we're going to move on to Darlene. She's going to talk about resources to support your homeschooling journey.
Hi, everybody. Does everybody feel like they're drinking from a fire hose yet? A lot of information, and if you haven't noticed, a lot of it is overlapping. I've been seeing a lot of the same things, and a lot of the same themes run out. I love the cake analogy as well, because that's kind of where I'm going to get started. One of the biggest things, the biggest resources, if we back all the way up before we even start, is knowing your why. Why are you homeschooling? And this is very important, because this is going to be the biggest thing that you're going to be coming back to throughout the year. And I've been doing this for 16 years, and it does not change. There are days when the school bus goes by and I'm like, oh, I wish I could send my kids on the bus, just because you're having one of those days. But but redirecting and always having your why and knowing why you're doing this, what your end goal is. Why are we baking this cake, this homeschool cake, as Vicki was saying? You know, we want the cake for a party, we want this, we want the end result to be this, and why are we doing this? And being able to come back to that, it's going to keep you focused and redirect you back to your purpose of why you're doing this. Some of you that are attending are probably here because a lot of changes has happened for your family since March. You were kind of thrown into this. For me, I had many months and years to decide if I wanted to do this. I had a choice. I was able to plan. And a lot of you are just like, boom, here we go. This year is completely different. So I really feel for you. But it's very important to to understand your why. It will also keep you encouraged, and then also help you with your thinking and your decisions as to the things that you're going to purchase, as like Vicki was saying, purchase to make your cake. It's going to help you direct you into maybe a curriculum that you want to use or a style of learning that you want to use. So you are your child's best teacher. So don't ever, this goes along with what Lisa was saying. I mean, you can do this. You know your child the best. You are your child's best teacher, and knowing your why is your biggest resource. And I also just wanted to mention real quickly that I have a PDF of everything that I'm talking about. It's going to go out to everyone that has registered and attending today. So it's going to look like this when you get it. So anyway, one of the first steps, once you figure out what your why is, and I would suggest writing this down so you don't forget it. Put it in a journal, put it on your calendar, remind yourself all the time. The next thing would be to set goals. And just as you set goals for your children, you set learning goals, you set education goals, you need to set goals for you as well. Our children need to see what we're doing, and that, we're doing the same things that we're expecting of them. So consider your attitude to this, your habits, maybe your own spiritual growth. Do you need to be more patient? Do you need to be more attentive? Maybe you need to be a better listener, or maybe more consistent. When you see these goals for yourself, again, write these down, and then you find ways to meet them, just as you're encouraging your children to find ways to meet the learning goals that they have. And then you guys are doing this together. You're both learning together. You're learning more about yourself. You're learning more about your children. Lorelai, I wish I met you years ago, because I could have used that information for my kids. So you all soak it. I hope you took screenshots, because that was excellent. Because learning, one of the things I enjoyed the most was learning about my children. And my oldest has sensory processing disorder, so I had a whole lot of information to learn, and the whole linguist, all of the whole brain and everything. And I said I would never be a teacher. Look what I've been doing for the last 16 years. So, but, so maybe you need to learn a new skill. Maybe you need to get more sleep. Maybe there's maybe a class that you need to take to, or a club that you need to join. But for yourself, the effort that you're going to put into setting goals for yourself, to better yourself and growing yourself, and you're going to be growing with your child, and it's just going to enhance your homeschool journey, and you're going to be doing it with your children, and it is going to be exciting. It really is. So trust the process, as they say. The next I would say is what I would say is protect your investment. And I saw Lorelai, I think, put links to HSLDA and HEAVE, that's Homeschool Learning Defense Association, Homeschool Educators of Virginia. There's also the Organization of Virginia Homeschoolers. There's lots of this information that you heard Vicki talking about, and about knowing your rights, knowing the law, and knowing these things and being prepared, like protecting your investment. I say protecting your home, protecting your decision is going to give you that peace of mind. I clearly do not use HSLDA's resources. I've been a member all these years that we've been homeschooling, and every time there are just so many resources that I do not use, and shame on me, slap my wrist, because sometimes I just forget it's there. I pay the membership fee for that peace of mind just in case something was to happen, I pay that and I get that peace of mind. And I can always call. They have advisors. They have a struggling learners department. They have, oh my gosh, there's just so many benefits for members. There's members perks. You have membership cards, and discounts that you can get in certain materials and those kinds of things. So, so look those up. Again, you could just Google search them, or you can access the link here, and just be in the know. It really does. It gives you that peace of mind so that you can be settled and concentrate on just learning and having your education at home. The next thing I would say is for protecting your sanity. Is your area association, your groups. We have Winchester Area Homeschool Association. We call it WAHA, W-A-H-A. They're on Facebook. You can join that group. There's Shenandoah Valley Homeschool Association. There are the Homeschool Moms of Winchester group. There's a Winchester Moms Night Out group. And there are also various area co-ops. You've probably heard some of them mentioned here in the chat today. And your family and your friends. These are all, this is going to provide to hopefully keep your sanity while you're doing this, because give you a chance to get out. You get encouragement from other homeschool moms, from your friends, from hopefully your family. Sometimes the family's not on board. So, you know, what was, I think it was Lisa said that don't let anybody should on you. That was actually really good, because we get the whole, you shouldn't do this, or what about this and this, and you know what, you make your decisions and you stand by your decisions, because this is your family, these are your children, and you are doing this because, again, you know what's best for your family, and don't let anybody should on you. So ask for help. So that's what these groups are here for. You know, ask your questions, share a frustration. Does anybody else feel this way? Because you are not alone. And so we're all in this together, and we help each other. This is a great community here in this area. So, so do not forget to ask for help so you can protect your sanity. Also protect your time, and I am keeping track of the time. So one of the big things was that for me was setting a consistent schedule, but I'm that person that wanted to schedule out every single hour of the day. And that just, you know, somebody will wake up sick and your day is gone, and then you feel like you failed, and then it's just depressing for everybody. But if you can set a consistent time to say, we're going to start at this time, you know, everybody can get their morning routines, and we're just going to try to set a goal to do this today. Like, this is what we're going to do. Because you have to be flexible, as you've been hearing that throughout the chat as well. Things happen, life happens, and you have to be flexible for life things to get in the way, and you just interruptions, and you just have to go with it. And sometimes you just have to cut off school and say, you know what, we'll pick this up tomorrow, and it's okay. Give yourself permission to say it's okay. We're not damaging our children. They're gonna learn just fine. In fact, everybody else has said too that the more flexible we are, that's just life, and it's going to teach them to be flexible and go with the flow and handle interruptions and change as we go down the road. Learn to say no. Everybody say it with me. No. Learn to say no, because it is so easy to want to go to this group and go to this play date and do this thing and sign up for this and put your kids in this and do this. And next thing you know, your schedule is busy straight from Sunday morning all the way to the end of the week, Saturday evening, and you guys are just going to go crazy. Learn to say no. And especially when it's during the day, if the phone rings, if you're busy, don't answer it. In fact, put your phone on mute to help. Put it away. In fact, I started homeschooling before we had these cell phones. So, you know, but just turn it off. Say no. You know, you don't have to volunteer for everything either. Know your limits and learn to say no. And let me see, what else is something? Break the bad habits and build good habits, because habits define our character. So if you're going along, you're seeing that you've got some bad habits, and this could be with social media, or you're just not being consistent with your time, or you're procrastinating on things, learn to break those habits and build good ones in its place. Again, this is also showing this to your children. Also in the PDF that you're going to get, I have a whole list on protecting your fun, and there's a whole list of things that ideas and groups that are in the area. For example, there's athletic associations that you can join: Valley Thunder, the Front Royal Flames, the Northern Virginia Athletic Association. There's also esports leagues. If you want to know more about esports, Shenandoah University also has the first esports arena here. It's just right in our backyard. And unfortunately, with all the things that have happened with COVID, they did not get to open their arena to show everybody this year, and things have been all crazy. But there is that. There's your parks and recreation. There's, of course, our library programs and events. There are local dance studios, museums, art galleries. Everybody is jumping in with homeschoolers, providing programs. There's theater groups. I think one is called Huzzah, and there's Winchester Little Theater. They have stuff for younger children. Local clubs, scouting organizations. There's many here in the area. Game schooling has been mentioned a few times, and I cannot tell you, games at home are a big resource. Look in your closet. You probably have some games that are counting, math of some kind, like life. We have an old life game, I'm talking like when I was a kid, and a game called Payday that helped us learn how to budget. Every month you had to pay the bills, and sometimes you didn't have enough money. There's Scrabble, Risk we played a lot, and Yahtzee. In fact, we got one of those big lawn Yahtzee games, so we get outside and we can roll the large dice and, you know, learn how to make combinations and add and that kind of thing. Movies was another thing. Movie schooling, I don't know if that's actually what they call it, but there's so many movies out there that if you're doing a unit study, you can find a movie to go along with that. Curiosity Stream is another one that has lots of documentaries. It's like maybe, sometimes they run a sale. It's like maybe $12 for the year, but mine was $19.99 for the year. And then, oh my goodness, we talked about life schooling. So there's things in the kitchen, kitchen science, kitchen math. Somebody mentioned grocery shopping already. And then like the news. I know the news is right now, but you can use that to spark debate and find out where your kids, what their opinions are. This is you learning more about them as well and getting to know your kids. That's what this is all about. This homeschooling is really, it's a scary journey to start out with, especially if you're somebody like me that was like, I don't think I could teach my kids, but I've been doing it and I enjoyed the process of learning with them and growing with them. And it really was a journey. I enjoy learning and watching my kids, hearing how their opinions and their feelings about things that are happening out in the world and how much they really do know. So, that was a big thing for our why. At this time, I wanted my kids to be productive citizens and be, participating in society and that was one of our big whys. So anyway, I know my time is up, but look for the PDF. I'm thinking Katie will be able to send that out to you. And the other thing, the Home Educators magazine came in, and there's a virtual event, Homeschooling with Confidence, August 25th through 27th. Go to their website because they didn't get to have their expo this year because they had to cancel it. So it's a virtual event, Homeschooling with Confidence, August 25th through 27th. And you can't register yet, but it's coming soon. So, sorry, I'm done.
Thank you, Darlene. And we are going to compile all these resources for everybody in one place because I know it's a whole lot of information, but we will get everything out to you guys. Thank you, Darlene. Okay, last but not least, we have Emily. She's going to talk about what a typical homeschooling day looks like. And remember when I said we had one family with 4 kids that started our Homeschool Hub program? This is their mom. Take it away, Emily.
Thank you. Yeah, this is us. Okay, so I have loved what everyone has said. I feel like I could put exclamation points behind everything that they've said. But what I hope you're not feeling overwhelmed, and I hope the overall message that you get is that your love is paramount in teaching your kids, and to not underestimate the power of your love and your ability to get revelation and inspiration for your kids on what they need in their life and how you need to teach them and how to be the best. So I'm going to share what a typical day looks like, and it may give you ideas and you're like, oh yeah, I want to get that, or I want to do that, or it may give you non-ideas like, I definitely don't want to do that. So hopefully it's helpful either way. And I also want to kind of emphasize that every day is not the same. As you kind of heard, that it's very flexible. It's very it's very unique, and that's the blessing of homeschool, that it can be different every day depending on the weather, or depending on who's visiting, or depending on if my husband's home, or depending on, you know, what the kids are wanting to do. So I'm just going to give you a basic overview of what a day looks like. And also, even though it's structured, there's a lot of unstructured fun within the structure, if that makes sense. So at first, when they said, will you talk about what your school day looks like? At first I thought, well, there's a lot of wiggling, there's some wrestling, sometimes with or without clothes on, and there's running around, there's dancing, there's a lot of different things in addition to sitting at a desk. So I'm going to try and share this document. Let's see if it works. This is my first time sharing a document. So let's just see. It's thinking. Okay. Okay, do you see this? Do you see anything yet?
We don't see anything yet.
Okay, hold please. Okay, maybe. Oh no, let's try something different. Let me try it on the computer. I had two options just in case.
I'm sorry this is happening, Emily. Sometimes technology can be so great.
I know, right?
And sometimes it can just be so much. So hang tight, everyone.
Let's see.
I was gonna say, while Emily's getting her technology to work, I would echo exactly what she said about the schedule looking different on different days. And also what Darlene said about learning to say no to all the options. There are so many options. And we found ourselves in that exact position where we were so intent on hitting all these different learning styles that we just filled our schedule up too much.
Okay, yeah, I would agree with that. Okay, I think it's working. It says at least.
So it says you're sharing your screen, but I still.
Am I?
It says to double click to enter full screen mode.
Okay.
We can do this. We can do this.
Everyone, cross your fingers. Okay, well, I can just start talking about it, and if it decides to show, then it does.
We can always add it to our resources too.
Okay. Okay, so we basically, my kids wake up early. They're early risers, so they're up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and they usually just start reading or playing with Legos. But before school, they have to make their bed, read their scriptures, get dressed, eat breakfast, do their morning dish job, and brush their teeth. And then we're usually started at school at around 8 or 8.
Emily, somehow you got muted. I don't know if you can hear me.
Okay.
There you go. Okay,
what,
we heard that you start school around 8 was the last thing that we heard.
Okay, yeah, so we start around 8, and it's not a hard, fast rule. But it's around there. So we start our school day with a devotional, and each child gets to take a turn making the decision. Oh, here it is. I can see it on my screen. Can you see it on yours?
We can see it.
Woohoo! Okay, just take some time. So here we are. They pick a scripture or an inspirational message. They pick the song. They lead the pledge, and we say our school rules. And then we do math for 30 minutes. And I feel like math is the subject that no one's crazy about, so we get it out of the way when their minds are fresh, and we just do it for 30 minutes. And then we go to Spanish for 20 minutes, and that's a combination of Duolingo, like online learning, as well as I teach them that. Then we do book read alouds with activities like 5 in a row, where it may be art, or it may be geography, or it may be writing, or it may be, I don't know, like a hands-on activity with that, with music. Then we do social studies for 30 minutes. And then around 10:30, we have a snack. And then science for 20 minutes. Writing, we do penmanship, we do stories, we do copy work. Then workbooks. I feel like workbooks are kind of nice in the sense that they're a catch-all. If you haven't covered something, workbooks usually pick up the slack on that. And then we have lunch. Now, I usually try and keep the mornings protected. I feel like the best learning happens then. We're all raring to go and we just kind of can keep it controlled. After lunch, it's not as easy to get everyone wrangled back together, so it's a little more independent and they do more independent things. So we have recess after where they can run and bike, swim, play Legos, do whatever they call cousins or do things like that. They practice their piano. They have a daily house cleaning job. And that's something that I would also point out to homeschool parents. That I feel like sometimes you may feel like there's not enough time to get things done around the house that you would do if they were at school, but just include your kids in the daily house jobs. Like have them help clean the house, have them cook their meals. My kids all fix their own lunches, and have them, help mow the lawn or do the gardening or do whatever. You do it together. And that's part of the beauty of homeschooling too, is that you all get to work together and play together and learn together. And it's great. They all need to read 30 minutes on their own. And for my younger kids, and sometimes my older kids, I have them read out loud to me. So we kind of rotate through who gets a turn doing that. We do spelling. I have them memorize words as well as working with a curriculum on like kind of the fundamentals behind spelling. And then they also do passports where they do it together, but minimal help from me. They research different countries with the country flag, the clothing, the musical instruments, the food, tourist attractions, language, and then they kind of do little presentations on that. So this is just a list of some of the ways that every day is a little bit different, but in general, we like to break up each of our activities with a dance party. I put on Disney music on Pandora and we do little dance exercises, or we do a little yoga thing. If it's really beautiful outside, I have a hard time doing school inside. So we take it outside. We either just play outside in the woods or we do our school work outside. I love alliteration. So on Mondays, it's Memorize Monday. So the kids take turns picking something that we memorize. They pick a poem, or like right now we're doing the Gettysburg Address and we memorize it all that week. Workbook Wednesday, we just have more of a heavy emphasis on workbooks. Every other 20 minutes is workbooks. I try to encourage curiosity by having I wonder times where they just get to research anything they feel like they're curious about, and then they do a little report on it. Yahtzee rolls, they usually beg to do this. They can roll, and if they get Yahtzee, they get 10 minutes of Lego playtime, or if they get a full house, either one. Family history moments, we love doing family history moments. I'm not sure if my kids love it because I let them eat candy that my grandpa used to give me when I was little when we did family history, but they can research their family history, look at ancestors' stories and things like that. Every Friday we do tests, and after their tests, we still do some school, but every 20-minute activity, they get 20 minutes of games, educational games on their iPads, so they really like that. We do a lot of art. The library has great books called Get Into Art that have great resources for teaching about different artists and also different artistic styles. We do a lot of games. We do puzzles and book reports and field trips, but usually we reserve the afternoon for the co-ops we go to, or doing doctor's appointments, or going to the library, or things like that, so that the morning is kind of a moment when you feel like you're really productive and you get something done, and you can, I'm kind of productivity driven. I like feeling like I've accomplished something. So if I can feel like, yeah, we had a good productive morning, then the afternoons can be a little more relaxed and more fun. And so I would just say that your homeschool routine doesn't have to look like mine. It doesn't have to look like anybody's, but the more fun you have together, then the more memorable and the more fun it's going to be. So teach something that you love for sure every day, so that you're having fun and they're having fun. And make sure that the overall feeling is that your kids know that you are there to champion their education and model love of learning. If you can do it together, it's even better. And to make sure that you're building their confidence and their ability to learn is really important. So I'm not sure I'm an expert on it, but I do love it. And I love learning with my kids. And I think it's a blessing when you choose to do it, and it can be a joy for your whole family. And that is all I have.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you so much, everybody. This has really just been wonderful. We're going to throw it back to Katie, and we're going to do some questions.
So friends, thank you so much. I know that this was a lot of wonderful information. I cannot thank our panel speakers enough. The library could not have put this event on without you. So thank you so much to our speakers who have so much experience and I know would love to help anyone interested further. So right now, we just want to open up the floor to any questions. If you all have any questions, you can write it in the chat. You are welcome to take yourself off mute, raise your hand. That also goes for anyone watching on Facebook as well. So we will leave the time open if we have any questions. And I guess I will offer my speakers, if you all have any last minute things you want to get in here.
I do.
Sure.
As everybody's getting brave and typing or whatever, you know, I think that I'm one of the, you know, newer homeschool moms, families that are here. And so, and I'm sure you veteran homeschool families had gone through this process, but one thing that I experienced that I wanted to share was deschooling. And so this is separate from unschooling, and this is something I didn't hear anybody really talk about. So the idea behind deschooling was important to me, and that's something I wish I had learned early on, because I went to public school, my husband went to public school, and in our society, it gets ingrained in our mentality and what school is supposed to look like. And the first few months that Jude and I started kindergarten, we really struggled, and it's because I realized I was trying to replicate school at home. And I had taught preschool for many years, and I thought that, you know, we were going to be so successful and everything was going to be great. And you know, we had our arguments, and I'm like, what am I doing wrong? Somebody mentioned you question everything that you're doing, and why is this not working? I should be able to teach my kid, but it's so different teaching your own child at home than if you've been a teacher in the past. You know, please don't try to replicate school at home. It might work for you, give it a shot. Sure, if it works for you, great. But that deschooling mentality is really important in those first few months, take a few weeks. And I guess it was Lorelai was and talking about observing, just observe what makes your child tick. We were trying to knock school out early in the morning. That made sense to me, so then you could play the rest of the day. That didn't make sense for Jude. And when I observed that once he got all his wiggles out and all this like excessive energy, then he was much better in the afternoon after lunch and his studies. And so that observation, take a few weeks, especially if you haven't been homeschooled or if your child was in public school. And I think there's probably a handful of families here that, you know, were in school, in public school, traditional settings last year, and now they're, you know, changing gears. And so please take that time to, you know, observe your child, observe how you're approaching your day, and build on that. And that deschooling, it's not unschooling, it's just recognizing that what you're doing in public school, don't try to replicate at home. That observation, you know, I know I'm repeating myself, but there's so many elements to that. So take that time to deschool and to gear up what it's like learning at home, because learning is life. And if you're not having fun, then you're not really learning. So keep that in mind, fresh homeschoolers, to just have fun with it. And that's it. Deschool. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. And I see that Vicki also put a great link in our chat box on Zoom about that, so that's great. I'm going to scroll up here to the chat and make sure I get everyone. Emily, we have a question from Elizabeth. How does the Yahtzee roll work for you and your family?
Yeah, so that's something I do let my kids dictate a lot of what we do during the day. I feel like giving them ownership over some of the things. I do want them to accomplish certain things, but I feel like if they have control over which order they do it in, or some ownership over the day, they like it. So when they ask for Yahtzee rolls, we have a national park Yahtzee game, and we roll it, and they get 3 chances each to roll a Yahtzee or a full house. And then if they do, they get 10 minutes that they can use as free time. They always pick Legos, but they can take it right then at that very moment, which they usually won't if no one else has rolled the 10 minutes too. They'll wait till someone else has rolled it to play the 10 minutes, but they can cash it in right then, or they can do it at another time during the day when they just say, I want to cash in my Yahtzee time, and they can go and do that. So it's fun and they like it.
Nice. That sounds like a lot of fun. I see in the chat that Kelly was asking some questions, and it looks like we're finding our answers from Vicky. I see Lorelai waving though.
So I would piggyback on what Emily was talking about, them having real ownership over their choices and time. I think my kids have talked to me about that being kind of their real gift from homeschooling. And to follow up on what Ashley said, coming from a traditional educational background and moving into this environment, there's a whole different dynamic about how you relate to your own child and how you relate to other people's children. And the idea that when I'm relating to other people's children, I don't have to relate to them the rest of their lives. I have to relate to my child the rest of their lives and my lives. So really being mindful of that dynamic. And it comes down to what Emily was talking about is choice, right? This idea that when they feel like they're allowed to have a voice with you, when they feel like you're providing structure that says we have to play within these limits, but I expect you to make decisions, and here's some guidelines on how to make those decisions. That is very much what Emily's talking about with this game system, but also what Ashley's talking about with deschooling, right? This whole process of really building an active relationship, which also piggybacks on what I had put in the chat about experiential education. So one of the gifts of my experience was that I was in a classroom for 10 years. And then because of my son's autism and my daughter's auditory processing disorder, I ended up working at a camp for 10 years. And that whole idea of teaching with hands-on, be there, do the thing, it doesn't look like school, really opened my eyes to those possibilities. So much is happening in a camp experience. We know it. I mean, that's why we take our kids to museums. That's why we go to workshops. That's why you're going to come to the library and do the activities with STEAM at the library. So this whole idea of really participating actively in their learning, which also stems from them having choice over their time.
Thank you, Lorelai. Thank you. I appreciate that. Emily was saying, I find my kids begging me to write a story or to keep reading instead of moving on to another subject. I love honoring those requests. That's a great way to look at that. I'm gonna give another minute to anyone that wants to ask any questions in Zoom. I did have a question on Facebook, and I'll just give a reminder to anyone that's watching via Zoom or Facebook, we will make sure you have all the resources mentioned. The speakers will be giving me any information they want me to share, and we will make sure that gets out. If you are not registered for this event in Zoom, say you're watching it on Facebook or at a later time, you are welcome to email hlchildren@hanleyregional.org, and we will make sure you get all the information you could ever want about homeschooling. All right, friends, I think, oh, I see another question. Kelly asked, where can I find information on local co-ops? Anyone want to take that?
You can, I'll answer that, Kelly. Some of the things that I mentioned about the groups on Facebook, when you go to Winchester area homeschooling, the Waha group, if you go to Shenandoah Valley homeschoolers, or even if you just did a Google search on homeschooling co-ops near me or near Winchester or near the city that you live, you're going to actually get a bunch. I've done that in the last couple weeks, just trying to help some other people out, and I found some ones that I didn't even know existed. So so you'll find lots of co-ops just by doing that simple Google search. But anyway, so that's what's in our area.
Thank you, that's perfect. All righty. So we will make sure that we share those resources, but I'm going to go ahead and close our time together because we have spent 2 glorious hours together talking about all things homeschool. I know there's so much more that we could share and that my speakers wanted to share on. So thank you to everyone who's watching virtually. Thank you again to my speakers and to Miss Gina for helping me to put this event on. Please remember that your local library system is here to support you, whether we need to connect you to one of these people in this call or to an organization or anything really that was mentioned, we are here for you. So thank you so much for watching, and hope to see you at the library very soon, everyone. Have a
Bye,
great
everyone.
day. Bye.